Sorry, go ahead.
What? Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're back. We know you missed us. You know, it's been a while. We missed you too. But here we are this evening for another fun installment of, you guessed it, the original Drink and Draw Social Club. None other than the great, the incredibly talented, the living legend himself, as Dan says, Mr. Neal Adams. So, but in the meantime, you just get us.
Yeah.
So, and us is Dan, Dave, Jeff, and old Crusty Joe.
Yeah.
So, how's it?
You're the only one who went there, Joe.
Yeah. What was that?
You're the only one who went there for the Crusty Bunkers reference.
Yeah. Come on, guys.
The only
history, man. By the way, I am very crusty. Just so you know.
I always enjoy it every time you see something. You find one of the comic books that the Crusty Bunkers crew would work on, and you try to go, well, who did that? Who did that page, or who did that panel? Because it probably those pages probably got broken down even into panels. Who was doing what to get some of those jobs done? But it's exciting that we get to ask Neal himself some history about some of those things. And
absolutely.
But you mean Neil Gaiman? Because that's what he calls himself.
I went through and I was picking up artwork to show, and it was the amount of covers alone is just like already someone's lifetime, let alone all the comic books.
I know. I'm tired just looking at it. Holy man, there's a lot of work.
Yeah. For a while, he was not only drawing pages, wasn't he the main cover guy?
Well, we'll find out, won't we?
Yes. So that's great one.
The earlier ones.
Jeff, why are you asking Neil Gaiman? I mean,
why are you asking me?
Why am I asking Neil Gaiman?
Why are you asking Dan? Why are you asking Dan? Thanks, Dave. Now you got Neil Gaiman in the break. Why are you asking Dan Neal Adams questions when we're going to have Neal Adams on?
I'm Danny Fingerroth to the Stan Lee here.
Yeah, and Dan has Dan, I'm sure will tell you, has probably told you, he worked with Neal for a while.
Not that long. I mean,
that's not what I heard, though. That's not what I heard.
We'll find out. And then in 1991,
I talked to Christine, and that's not what she said, Dad.
They're just trying to kick me out of the office.
Sitting on the porch.
You wanted to work there, but
Well, I ended up inking some of the Earth 4, I think it was maybe, but basically it was I would bring pages in, and then the next day, early in the morning, Neal had gone in and shown me, it was like an art lesson. I got an art lesson every single day I came in. I was the first one in the morning with him, and he would go over and he basically kind of redrawn everything that I did. I was so new at inking. Of course, he's going to, fix everything. But it was also telling me the reasons why. So it was very interesting.
That's the most important part, right?
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff never, I listened to it then and I nodded my head, and maybe 10% of it or 5% of it sunk in, but I still hear those lessons and listen to them, and now they start to make a little bit more sense. A mere 29 years later.
See, I just would have redrawn you, Dan, and not told you what I did. Just
well,
Neal's figure it out later
than you are.
What? Yeah, I don't care that much about Dan.
Yeah.
Well, the truth comes out.
Right.
Yeah. Well, like you guys don't know.
So if Neal was doing that for Dan, he must, and we'll ask him when he comes on, but I understand he did that for a lot of people.
Oh, I'm sure he did it for everybody.
Well, if there's anybody watching the show, they should go back to the Larry Hama episode, and Larry talks about that at length.
Yes.
See what I did there, Dan?
That was
yeah, you just got about 3 more views on the Larry Hama episode.
Yeah. That was a great episode, by the way. Larry was amazing.
Oh my God.
Larry was great. Howard was great. Walt Simonson was a great episode. Yeah, we've had some great ones lately.
Yeah.
Should we bring Neal in so we don't keep him waiting?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Like the thing to do.
I think it's a nice thing to do.
Does Neal want to come in now at this point?
There he is.
Neal,
welcome.
We're very happy to have you on.
Hey guys, I just went to pee.
Oh.
You guys are coming.
You missed nothing. You missed nothing, Neal.
I heard you talking about Howard Chaykin, and I noticed that camera shot of sort of up his nose.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys know it, but Howard Chaykin can fit $1.65 up his nose.
Or can he make change?
Yeah.
That's what girls ask him. You guys don't know that, right?
No, that's new.
no
That's a
idea.
new one on me.
That's true. I wouldn't even a camera up his nose again if I were you.
We should make
We
sure
have it back on.
Level C
We should-
corners fall out.
we should make sure they add that to this Wikipedia page.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they have it there.
They have it?
$1.60.
All right, we'll check that out.
$1.60. It's hard to get the last few pennies in.
That's
Well, it's
always-
tough when you start with a 50-cent piece.
Well, that's the amazing thing. That's why nobody could beat him. That
Yeah.
damn 50-cent piece, boy, that rock you.
Jeff, imagine if you could do things like that where you'd be in the business.
I have no special skills.
No, you don't have a special thing like that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I can't juggle a little bit.
You have to learn these things. Stand on your head, spit nickels, things like that. Good for you. Have young
Let's
artists
all
come
be a
into-
new talent.
have young artists come into your studio and show you their work.
Yeah.
And you guys were asking about that, and I didn't actually do that. It was Chris that made me do it.
Oh,
Chris would bring stuff in, and she'd say, "Dad, you gotta do something with this work. I mean, this guy's he's so sad, and I'm gonna cry." And she would like push me around, and I would go, "Okay, fine. All right, what's his name? Frank Miller. Oh,
Wow.
this is such crap."
So comics
many
really
times
has
did you
her to
come
thank.
Huh?
didn't he I was reading that he just kept coming in,
Yeah.
or
Came in about every week. Yeah, come in every week, and he'd have like 3 or 4 pages done.
wow.
And he'd put up with my shit, and he'd go away and come back, and the stuff would come back, and it would be still pretty terrible. But the amazing thing is, unlike a lot of guys who brought their stuff in, he actually listened, and he tried, and he corrected the things that I talked to him about. I mean, he asked for basically asked for an hour, right? Came in and asked for an hour. And of course, I didn't have an hour to spare, but my daughter, Chris, the dad, he really need. Chris, I know he needs it. But it's awful. I can't drive a cab. And she said, "Dad," and I go, "All right, fine." So I would give him an hour, right? And he would come in a week later, and he would have like 4 or 5 new pages done. And I'd look at him, and it'd be like, "Oh, this is so bad." But I noticed the things that I talked to him about, he actually fixed. He actually fixed those things. He focused on those things and he fixed them. So I gave him another hour. So he'd go away and he'd come back. And yeah, it was still not good, but still he focused on those things. In other words, he didn't waste my time. He listened and he learned. And it wasn't learning, how to draw, because I don't help people draw. I help people think, layout of a page, how do you tell a story, nice big panel on each page just so that you get excited about the page, little things like that. Anyway, one day he came in and he had a 6-page story, and I looked at it and I said, "Okay, where'd you get this?" He said, "Well, I went over to Dell, I think it was, and I had they gave me a tryout story." And I said, "Okay, can I look at the script?" So I read the script over, and then I looked at the pages, and I went over the pages page by page. And so he said at the end of it, he said, "So you think I ought to draw it over?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I think you should." He said, "Oh, I don't know exactly what to do about that, because I handed it in and they accepted it." I said, "That's it. No, you win. Don't ask me one more question.
Right.
You're in. Your next stop, Marvel Comics, DC Comics." A year later, he was doing Daredevil.
Yeah, that's
Amazing.
amazing.
I've never been so wrong about a guy in my life. Never been so wrong. That's like the high point of like Neil stupidity.
I found this nice little drawing you did for him. That was kind of cool. But of course, this was the first time I ever saw your work, and I looked it up on Heritage Auctions.
Really?
What it sold for, the original. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
$600,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. pretty incredible. That's a little sick, I'd say.
It's insane. I love it.
Who would you rather draw for, comic book companies or fans?
Well, at that price, fans.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm saying, where did you get that?
Well, it's also nice to have fans that grow up to be really, really rich.
Yeah, that's a.
What's going on? I mean, they do that, you know. Like, I don't know. Did you inspire them to be brilliant and to earn money? I'll tell you something I do. A lot of people, you know, donate money to black causes and stuff like that. And I have my causes, but essentially they're, you know, hospitals and stuff. So, and I don't do black. What I do is, if I'm at a convention, I get, and you know, you have these clusters of black artists, and usually very talented, some of them not so talented. And they kind of gather together, you know, they hang together. So you get 5 or 6 guys. So I go over and I sit down and I say, okay, guys, we're going to have a conversation. I say, you ever invest in the stock market? And they say, no. I said, we're going to talk about it today. So I sit and I talk to them about the stock market. Talk to them how to take their money and to invest their money and to talk about it. And then if they have questions on art, which they always have it, you know, it's always like, oh, they're waiting for the art question, you know, and it's like, no, let's just steer over here. Okay, let's talk about what you're going to do with your money, how you're going to save your money, how you're going to invest your money, and how you're going to move forward. Because in my opinion, that's more important. I mean, if you're already making a buck, okay, and you can take a small portion of that, invest it, that's a smarter thing to do. And that's how you advance. If I'm making a contribution to my brothers, that would be the kind of contribution I feel more strongly making than at home. That's what I do.
Where did you learn about investing in the stock market and stuff? Is that something that you learned from a mentor or your father?
From losing money.
From losing money?
From losing money. From being stupid. Generally, people learn things by being stupid. What is it now? What? My wife insists, my wife who is sitting over there on the couch insisted that she started me, but she started me losing money. Well, I lost it myself. I would invest in things that I believed in. Really stupid. Really stupid. Invest in Google, invest in Apple, invest in things that are going to make money. And limited to that because nobody's a genius. It's one of the things I learned. I mean, you learn by making mistakes. You screw it up, and you go, "Why am I doing this?" And you have conversations with people, and wait a second, is what I'm doing making any damn sense, or is it just because I want to do it, or I believe in it? I believe in H power, or whatever it is. And you discover very quickly there are simple ways of doing things. One of them is this. You're not a genius. I start off my way, talk with the guys. You're not a genius. Are you a genius? I'm not a genius. Okay. I don't know anybody that's a genius. So if you can have 5 stocks that you know because you've studied them for 3 years and they're always making money compared to most other stocks, they're always making money. Let's just list a couple, okay? Because I can't be accused of giving you guys advice. So if anybody asks you, I'm not giving you advice. Got it?
Got it.
Yeah, you don't want to be sued.
No, I don't want to be sued by somebody saying you can't do that. I'm not giving you advice, okay? But there's Apple. Just goes up. Google just goes up. Maryland. Netflix just goes up. Amazon just goes up. Stop there. That's it. Take 10% of your income, invest in those stocks, and if they start to go down, smile and have a conversation with your friends, go out to dinner, you can go to a movie, go to a movie, and ignore it. Let the money work for you because you've invested in 5 of the top stocks in the country that are always going up. Why are you doing that? Because you're not a genius. You're a genius. You play with the stock market and you do all these things that these brilliant guys do. And in the end, they still blow it. So you just invest in those 5 stocks that you know, you look it up and go, Last 3 years, it made 150%, 170% a year. Unbelievable. How do you do that? That's not 10%. That's 170% each year for 3 years. Do I want to make that money? Yeah, I do want to make that money. Do rich people make that money? Yeah, they do. Do they do it by investing with investment counselors? No. Those guys put them in mutual funds. You just go and get the top 5 stocks. You put 10% of your money there, which you don't miss, by the way. 10% is like, that's less than your taxes. You put 10%. It's like if you had 10 quarters on the table. Okay, put 10. You haven't got 10 quarters put on the table. Let's say you put some quarters on the table.
It's in Howard's nose, check.
Most of it's in Howard's nose.
Then you close your eyes, and I take one away, or I add one, and then you open your eyes. Are you going to be able to immediately tell the difference of what I did? Did I add one, or did I take one away, or did I leave it alone? You don't know, because you don't know 10 to 1. Your brain doesn't function that way. If you can take 10% of your money and ignore it, just put it over here, and you can go on the internet and you can invest. What's it called, Marilyn? E-Trade. Go to E-Trade. There's like 5 different ones. You go to E-Trade. Now you don't have to suffer the embarrassment of some smart ass on Wall Street telling you you're making bad investments. You just go to E-Trade and you just press a couple of buttons and suddenly you're invested. And you put your money, that quarter, whatever it is, you put it in any one of those 5 stocks. But you don't leave those stocks because guess what? You're not a genius.
Yeah, Jeff.
5 stocks, okay? Put in those 5 stocks. A year from now, oh my God, I didn't make 10%. I made 50%. Look at that. How did that happen? Well, what if it goes down? Then leave it there. Then leave it there. It'll go up. Guess what? Why? Because America's a success. Even with Donald Trump, America's a success. In spite of Donald Trump, America's a success. He can't beat the stock market. The stock market always goes up, never goes down. Anyway,
I wish I'd been given this kind of advice when I was younger.
That's why in any art school there ought to be a business class where you are forced, in spite of yourself, to go and learn about business and to learn how to run your business, because that's what you have. You have a business, and you don't have to spend that much time on it. Do I spend a lot of time on the stock market? No, I only got 5 stocks. That's all I invest in. Have I doubled my money in the last year? Yes, doubled.
Wow.
Doubled. I'm just saying, it's not that hard. It doesn't take a rocket scientist.
Well, you don't have to worry about that, you guys, as far as the rocket science in this group.
No.
At all. But no, that is good advice. Every college should have that, and they don't.
Every art school, School of Art Design, School of Visual Arts, Caltech. Why did this go off, Marilyn? Why did this pop off? Maryland's make off air popped off. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know why my machine went off. Anyway, if you get one business class as one of your classes, just like whatever chemistry or whatever the hell you have to take, which you like. Oh, I don't want to do this. I want to draw pictures. There's one class a week. You learn about business. You learn how to take care of your shit. You know how many guys come out of art school? They get work in the comic book industry, and within a year, they're living on soapboxes in some shitty little apartment because the income tax people have taken their money. And
we've heard that story a lot.
Yeah, a lot. Big time. You shouldn't be in that position. And if you took a business class, one business class would get you out of that. You learn about it. And we don't do that. We don't do that in our industry. Want to make a suggestion to Marvel or to DC Comics?
Or just talking?
What?
I like that you got in trouble.
Yeah, why?
Because somebody.
Okay, so somebody. No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm drawing with my mouth. Ask me a question. The drooling. The trouble with you guys is that you pull that little string and I'm talking there. Okay.
Yeah.
So Neil,
what I'm saying is both DC and Marvel ought to have a little class on business, because their artists would make money, their writers would make money, they would do better work, and they'd have better comics. Just saying.
That's true.
I remember, Neil, when I was going to SVA in my senior year, we had a class. I wasn't a comic book major. I was an illustration major. We had a class called Senior Illustration. So we all went into this class thinking it was going to be, well, and it was taught by Marshall Arisman. And so we all went into this class thinking, well, Marshall's going to, he's good. This is all about illustration. And what it was just about the business, about, how to voucher, what to expect when you hit the streets, the rejection you're going to face. And that the whole class was just about how to survive, and how to create your, how to handle yourself and stuff. It was a great class,
I'll give you guys a piece of advice. Okay. You see how it sets in your head. Okay.
All right.
This is simple advice because it's not stock market. It's general advice. So you're going to a client. It's not necessarily DC or Marvel because you can't do it at DC or Marvel, but you get clients outside of comics, right?
Yeah.
So yes, okay, good. You go to the client and he knows your work or doesn't know your work and wants to have you do some job, and so he says, okay, how much are you going to charge me for this? Okay, now he should have replaced that with, how are you going to cut my throat? Because you get the knife out if you're smart and you're going to cut his throat. Okay. Now, if he says, okay, well, we generally do this, have this done for $600 a drawing, you're kind of stuck. Okay. You're in a bad position. Now, there's things that you can do to get out of that position. I can tell you about it, but let's just say he was stupid enough to ask you how much you're going to charge. Okay. Now he's got in his mind already how much he wants to pay. And you have a pretty good idea of what he wants to pay. Let's say he wants to pay $600, okay, for a drawing or whatever. Now in your mind, you're saying, boy, I'd like to do better than that. I'd like to get 1,000. Okay, so what you do is this. Memorize this, guys. Normally, for this kind of a job, anytime I do this kind of a job, I get $2,000. But I'm willing to work with you. Okay? Now, you maybe lied to him a little bit, okay? But you said, when I do a job like this, I normally get $2,000. Now, you don't get $2,000, or maybe you do. So you've taken the number that was in your mind, $1,000, and you've simply doubled it. Okay, without thinking. It's not your job to think. It's your job to do the line. Normally, when I do a job like this, I get $2,000. But I want to work with you. Okay, so now he's in a position to either hire you or not hire you, but he hasn't got $2,000 to spend. So he'll say to you, gosh, I don't know, the most we spend on something like this is $1,200. And you say, well, that's okay. I want to work with you, so I'll be glad to take my price down and do that. What have you just done? You've just made $600 beyond the $600 that he was going to pay you. Because he was too embarrassed to say he wanted to pay you $600 because you already told him $2,000, right? He's not going to want to do that. So you say, no, that's fine. $1,200 is just fine. So he'll go, thank you. Okay. And then you shake and you go out. And he'll go to the guy next door and he'll say, I just got so-and-so to work for me. And he normally charges $2,000. And he took his price down.
And he'll be happy about it.
And he's happy as a pig in shit. Okay. You have doubled your money, but you did more than that. In 14 seconds, you made $600.
And the benefit of that too, not just for you, is that he now will think that art is more expensive.
Well, not only think it's more expensive, but that people are willing to make deals because you took your price down for him.
Yeah, it definitely that benefits everyone down the line.
You've done him a favor, and everybody benefits. Okay, because it's not his money. He's not taking out of his pocket. He's taking a corporation's money and he's spending it wisely. and he spent it wisely. If his boss comes and says to him, "Hey, what's this $1,200?" You say, "Well, the guy took his price down. He was originally going to charge me $2,000." Now, I have given this little lesson, very short little lesson, if you remember it, okay, to a number of people in the comic book business and outside of the comic book business. They will come to me within 3 months and say, "I cannot fucking believe it. I'm getting double what I normally get from every client I work with. I don't understand how it works." He says, "But I do it word for word." And sure enough, they come up with the money.
That's fantastic.
Right? No, it totally works. If every one of you guys did that within 3 months, you'd stop me at let's pretend we go to convention, and you'd say, "Hey, I just doubled my income."
And then we have to give you a percentage, though, right?
No, you don't.
Oh,
That's a Stan Lee move. That's my no. So
That's
I know.
fantastic.
Okay, let's move on to something else.
Hey, I noticed that now we can see what you're drawing. What are you working on there, Neil?
This is a sketch drawing for a fellow that likes pencil drawings of Tarzan or Tarzan-esque type stuff. So this is Tarzan and Jane and La of Opar. And he's done, I would say, 5 drawings with me, or had me do 5 drawings.
he must have been a fan of these.
Yeah, it pays very well. Exactly. Very
Yeah.
much. And though he uses those as reference, yeah. And so he says like that or like this or like that. So he's a very good fan, and he pays very well. Certainly more than DC or Marvel.
Is that just a basic number 2 pencil you're making that beautiful thing with?
Yeah, that's what I use. Number two secretary pencil.
Oh,
Isn't that amazing, Jeff?
yeah.
I hate
So
to
earlier today, we were doing a test just to make sure everything worked. And I'm watching him do this, and I took a screenshot of it, and I noticed my expression on my face was just like bewilderment. I was like, man, I got a long, I still, have a long
More than usual, Dan?
Yeah, just more than usual. A dumber look than you're used to seeing.
Okay.
A lot of people ask me about the pencil, and to be perfectly honest, I had a teacher. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a teacher who was actually a watercolor teacher, and really gave good advice on a lot of things until one day. And when I say good advice, I could recite the advice too many stories. And he said, and he held up a pencil one time, and he pointed to the eraser and he pointed to the front end, and he said, "If you draw with a pencil like this, and you use this before you use this, finish using this, then you'll never be an artist." And we all in the class went, "Oh," you do that thing where, he said something wise. Then you go, "What? I use that eraser all the time. I got 2 more erasers. I erase the shit out of my stuff. You're out of your mind." It was a stupid piece of advice, but it's good, like, wow, that's so profound. But no, number 2 secretary pencils. I love them. They make the greatest lines. You have to understand that when I started, more or less, I started in the 50s and the 60s. In the 50s and the 60s, you had people like Bob Peak and Austin Briggs and Bernie Fuchs who did this pencil illustration with basically with a number 2 pencil. Only it was the nature of the line and the nature of how you handle the line that gives it all the texture and volume that you want to get if you learn to handle the tool better. So it's the handling of the tool, not the tool. The tool is just the pencil.
Did you ever work with Tom Sawyer?
Tom Sawyer was his original name.
Yeah.
And yes, I worked with Tom. Well, I didn't work with Tom. I sucked his brain dry as best I could. He was probably the most advanced artist that I ran into when I was a teenager. He worked for Johnstone and Cushing. I copied his stuff. I copied his techniques. I learned to take photographs, and he introduced me, in fact, to the split head on the Polaroid camera, where you could take you wanted to take more pictures with the Polaroid because it was expensive, so you had this split head. put the split head on the lens. You take a picture on one side of the framing, then you turn it around, take a picture on the other side of the framing, so you'd have two pictures you could trace.
Huh.
And then I traced them in the autograph. But that's one of the things I learned from Tom.
I noticed there's a lot of similarity. Like you went into film, and you did a lot of, and he obviously went into film and TV also. And your career is, obviously a very famous ad agency too that's had all sorts of humongous accounts. But you're always back into comic books, and regardless. But I did notice a little of the similarities there. It's kind of interesting.
Oh no, it's not similarity. Copying.
Oh.
I copied anybody. I copied Mort Drucker. I copied Stan Lee. I copied anybody that was good. I learned everything I could. I sucked the brains out of their heads as much as I could, because I was this 18-year-old kid who was now, trying to compete in a world where everything had blown up. Everybody was chased away. Remember, in 1953, most guys were chased right out of the business by the Congress. And when that happened, you had terrible stories like Al Williamson, who was the true inheritor of Alex Raymond's work. All he could do was ghost other artists, artists that did Rip Kirby, which Raymond Williamson should have done, or Flash Gordon, and they gave it to Dan Barry, of all people, the worst choice in the world. Should have given it to Williamson. So here was Williamson, probably the best artist at EC Comics, doing ghosting for these wannabes who could not hold a torch to him. You had Wally Wood, who went off and did illustrations for if science fiction and fantasy science fiction. Basically, that's the best work you could get, and you're doing full page illustrations for $75. You had Jack Davis, who did advertising. Actually, was the most successful of any of those guys, because he did advertising stuff in that cartoony style. Who else? Alex Toth, who went off to California to work for Hanna-Barbera. Excuse me? Alex Toth, Hanna-Barbera, really? Yeah, and made a career of it. And he would tell you that it was his choice, but obviously it wasn't his choice. He's a brilliant artist, and that was a place to make money, but really it was bad. So here I was, an 18-year-old guy. Where do I find work? I'm not going to find it at DC. Marvel didn't even exist as a company. It was called Timely, and nobody was working for them. So I went to a place called Johnstone and Cushing, and at Johnstone and Cushing, the leftover best guys were there. So here I was competing with the very, very best in the industry as this punk kid. I had to learn a lot fast, and I did. And Tom Scheuer taught me the most. And I don't think he felt he was teaching me, but by God, I sucked his drippings, I can tell you that. I really, really did. And so if my stuff looks like him at one particular time, like he did a thing called, just show you what an evil creature I was. He did a thing called Chip Martin College Reporter for Boys Life magazine. And he decided, and I guess he was paid $300 a page, something like that. And there were eight panels on a page. And he decided, as a business decision, which is another thing that I really admire him for, that he wouldn't do a panel for less than $75. Now here was Tom Scheuer making a decision like that when people at DC Comics, the only company that was really out there doing anything, was paying $40 and $45 a page. And he said, I'm only going to work if I get at least $75 a panel.
Wow.
And the Chip Martin College Reporter didn't fall into that area, and the company wouldn't pay it. Okay, so Johnstone and Cushing, or Tim Johnstone, came to me and he said, "Do you think you can do it?" And the evil me said, "Yes." So I did it exactly the way that Tom did it. Took the photographs, everything else, you can't see the transition point between his pages and my pages. Except mine had more work in them because I was anxious to please. And so I got that account. That is not to say that Tom didn't go on and get other accounts because of the position he took, but I got his account. And I remember he came into Johnstone and Cushman, and he said, "I see you're doing Chip Martin." I said, "Yeah, is that okay?" He said, "Well," I said, "you're doing a good job." I said, "Yeah, and I look more like Chip Martin too." Didn't go down too well, and I did. By the way, I looked more like Chip Martin. We could take photographs. Anyway, he decided. Oh, it's a rough story. He decided that if he didn't sell a comic strip by the time he was 30, then he would quit and he would go out to Hollywood and make his fortune out there. And he had a strip. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's actually pretty good. And I at that time was 20. And I got the Ben Casey comic strip. And I think that kind of pissed him off because he was waiting till he got to be 30. And so he decided to go to Hollywood, and he became the showrunner for Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah.
Most long-lasting detective shows on television. And so
Amazing.
He did pretty good and changed his name to Tom Sawyer so there wouldn't be any confusion.
Oh, I was wondering.
Yeah, and then that's it. So I owe everything in a weird way I owe everything to everybody around me. I mean, I learned from everybody. I was a succubus.
That's the way to do it.
Well,
He's always one of my favorites too, and it's weird to see him. He's on Facebook, and I just remember studying those Volk advertising art.
Yeah, Volk. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I worked for Volk as well.
I know. My dad would show me. He goes, "This is the one you did," because my dad was in advertising.
Right.
So he's already a kind of a fan of yours.
This is Tom Sawyer. This is Neil Adams. Looks just like it, doesn't it?
It's pretty cool.
Okay, your turn. See, you became so interested that you're kind of lost in it.
Good. This makes our job easier over here.
So you guys know that I have a comic book store?
I still haven't been to it yet, and I live in LA. I got to get over there.
Oh, it's really a really nice store. Very, very light. We have nice light wood floors. We have a little outdoor atrium that we're fixing up. You can go out there now, but I'm going to get an air conditioner out there and make a solid floor rather than a rock floor, and that's going to be real nice. So you can go and hang out and meet your friends if we ever get back to full time going to comic book stores or conventions. But
have you reopened?
We've reopened, yes, as of last week, because you can allow 6 people in your store at once. So we came up with kind of a good idea on Maryland. We came up with a good idea, and that was why don't we have an outdoor kind of convention-ish type area in the parking lot right out in the back. So that people can come on Saturday and Sunday, and I think we're doing Saturday, Sunday, and Monday now. So people can come and we can have a sale out there of comics, and so people can come and hang out there. They have to wear masks and they have to wear gloves, and they can hang out there and keep distancing. But it's a nice big parking lot, and then we can let them in 6 people at a time, so they can go in and buy stuff in there. Same rules, okay. And then come out and hang out outside. And we have, refreshments and soda and chips and pockets.
Pretty cool.
Like that.
Where in LA is that?
We're in Burbank. We're in Magnolia, between Cass and Cahuenga.
4708 West Magnolia.
Yeah, 4708 West Magnolia Boulevard.
Crusty Bunkers.
It's called Crusty Bunkers.
Excellent.
Of course, that's from the old Crusty Bunkers at Continuity.
Yeah, do you mind telling us the secret of that name? How you chose Crusty Bunkers?
It was a story. I'm pretty sure this is the first story, but it may not be the first story. But I'm pretty sure Howard Chaykin had put in a story at DC Comics on Fafford and the Grey Mouser. You guys, anybody know Fafford and the Grey Mouser?
Oh
Yeah, we just I just did a drawing at one of our last shows.
Okay, good. So he did a Fafford and the Grey Mouser, and he really tried to draw well at that time, and he did a pretty good job. Horses were attacking horses, but I would have to say, considering his age, he did a fantastic job. They were going to give it to Vinnie Coletta. Now, Vinnie Coletta has ruined more art than any 5 inkers have ever inked art. And that would, in my mind, the worst thing that could possibly happen to a young artist is to hand it over to Vinnie Coletta and have him ruin it. So I volunteered to do it. And so the editor was very happy that I had done that. And now I was stuck with, 8 pages of Fafford and the Grey Mouser, maybe 12 pages. So I took him back to Continuity, and Dick looked at me, and after he heard about it, he said, are you really doing that? I said, well, yeah. So I came up with this idea. Why don't I have different people that come into the studio and mooch and drink our coffee and have our Danishes and hang out? Why don't I have them sit down and work on Fafford and the Grey Mouser? And so they said, well, will we get paid for it? And I said, well, okay, yeah, you'll get paid. So I pulled out a notebook and I listed a page per page. And the idea was that whatever anybody did on a page, they would list it on the notebook so they could show what they did. So I had them do that. So they would come in, let's say they would do a figure, or somebody say, oh, I'll do the girl figures. No, you won't. No, you won't. I'll wait till Jeff Jones gets here and he'll do the girl figures. You just do the background or do the castle or whatever the hell it is. Or you can't draw horses, so get your goddamn pen off there. And so I'd wait for different people to come in, because the thing, pages would be sitting on somebody's desk and they'd be moving forward. And so we basically got the job done. And I said, look, I'm really sorry. I'm only going to pay you what we got, so I'm breaking it down according to the notebook. Okay. And if you disagree, look at the notebook and you'll see whether or not you got treated fairly. So I did, half a panel or whatever the hell it was, and, some guys walked away with $4, because a couple of figures in one panel. But anytime anybody would question, I would say, there's the book. If you think you did more than everybody else, there you go. There's the page. Go to the page and you tell me if you deserve more. And of course, everybody had to agree that no. Did 2 figures in one panel. So I said, look, it's not a good way to make any money, but we can be saving some artwork, because there's some nice jobs coming through that, they're going to give to people like Vinny. And so we kind of started to do this. We did, I think, about 8 issues of Frank Brunner's Doctor Strange. We had a good time with that, and we did some other pieces and stuff. And after a while, it wasn't quite as necessary because we started to get better inkers in the business. And but the problem was this: when I handed in the Fafford and the Grey Mouser, the editor said, "So, who will I credit the inking to?" They said, "Okay, you can't credit it to me because I only did some figures and stuff. So credit it to Crusty Bunkers." Why did I say that? I don't know. It was one of those, it was a phrase that was going around at the time, where you say, bowling with cannonballs or whatever the hell it is, that was buzzing around. Crusty Bunkers was buzzing around, and it sounds good. It has a nice sound to it. So I said Crusty Bunkers. So they wrote it. The editor wrote it. I think it was Murray Bolton. Wrote it down, and sure enough, it became established as. And now, as far as I know, everybody on Earth was a Crusty Bunker. Everybody was a Crusty Bunker. We actually have T-shirts at the store, so that people, hey, you got any Crusty Bunkers T-shirts? Yes, I do. Were you a Crusty Bunker? Yeah, sure, I was. Okay. And it turns out a lot of people.
The direct response to Vinny. That's kind of interesting.
Vinny was a giant pain in the ass when it came to inking. And anytime I would confront him, he would say, "Yeah, but the job is done on Monday." And I go, "Well, it's true. It's done. The job will never see the light of grain." So it was always, I've always had a terrible relationship with Vinny, a good terrible relationship, because if Vinny couldn't please you, he would get you laid.
Huh.
Sorry.
That's a good friend, Dan.
I'm just saying. Hey, you want to meet some girls? No, Vinny, I don't want to meet some girls. I'm a married man. No, really. Come on. And I can eat those pages. No, Vinny. No trade-off. Sorry.
I wonder he got all that work.
Exactly.
All making sense now.
Right. Some Italians.
So was Terry Austin? He was a Crusty Bunker, right?
Oh yeah, he was absolutely. Well, Terry Austin, he was a true talent. I don't know what he's doing now. Working at Archie, is he? I think.
I don't know. I know he's working at Disney for a little bit. He
fucked up his back bad. I would go by his desk and I would say, "Terry, don't sit like that. You can't go over the work. You're going to screw up your back." Well, 10 years later, he screwed up his back and he had to stop working for a year. It was terrible. And he drew so meticulously. I mean, things that you sort of indicate on a page that you barely indicated, he would turn into something. I
remember seeing those, the backgrounds for, was it Muhammad Ali Superman?
Yeah. That page 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Pigeons flying off the roof and stuff. Like, I just barely indicated that, and sure enough, he'd do it. He did
so
just
cool to see.
Beautiful background. And he came just at that magical time where I was doing Superman versus Muhammad Ali, and Dick's background guys were, let me say this, slobs. Dick was good and efficient, and he did quite a good job. But he would get guys like, I wouldn't want to name names, but really guys that would slop things out. As it turns out, Terry Austin showed up, and it was like magic, like he showed up. God sent him down to do those backgrounds, and he did just a great job. Spaceships, just fantastic. Nobody like it. I was so lucky.
I remember hearing that Jim Shooter said when he would ink a cover at Marvel, it would sell some kind of crazy extra number just with his inks.
Well, gee, I didn't know that. But his inks are like, what's his name? Art Adams.
Yeah.
Very, very complete. Every line touched every other line. Just really beautiful.
Yeah, he had a gorgeous. His line had so much life and personality to it.
One of the things I remember you telling me, I had inked something and there was a black background and the figure had a shadow on it and it melded into, technically it would meld into the background, but there was it was very popular back then to put a halo around a figure, like a white halo.
Yes.
And I remember you said, look over there, and you go, do you see any halos, against that shadow in that wall? And what could I say? Obviously not. And then you said there'll be no halos on these, on these books.
Well,
I love that. I never put a halo on again.
Yeah, that's good. And basically it's a cop out. That you do it for a period of time, but after a while, the reality comes to you, and you go, well, it's just a thing that I'm doing to separate the parts of the images. And aren't I smart enough to come up with a better way?
Well, yeah, I think you showed me. You said, well, just put some rim lighting if you really need to see the back of that.
There's always a way to do it and to do it right. You just have to think a little bit more.
Yeah.
If you don't allow yourself to think, then what's the challenge of doing artwork? You have to, part of the process is thinking. It's not, art is, a facility of the hand and the brain. But Good art is thinking, putting things together mentally with your brain. I'm going to show you guys something.
Oh, good.
Okay, good. I don't have to come up with questions.
I got tons of questions. I just can't get a word in edgewise. Holy mackerel!
You got to jump in. Anyway, so I'm a big fan of Gene Colan. Okay, and of Gene Colan in different stages of his career, because I saw his stuff early on, and then I saw it later on, and I saw it near the end. And one of the things that fascinated me about Gene's stuff is that as he went on, he left more and more unfinished. So things would like fade off. And I thought, if you give him a good inker, somebody who is equal to the task, then he can then finish off the art instead of leaving it to an inker who's just going to go, well, I'll just ink the lines. Lines are lines, but inking is inking. It's a slightly different story. And it's one of the distinctions between a good inker and maybe not necessarily a good inker, is a good inker will finish the drawing. A bad inker will just ink the lines. Oh, that's the line. It was there. Well, that's not the point. The point is, did you finish the drawing? Was it done? Does it feel like flesh? Does it feel like wood? Does it feel like metal? Did you do something with your line to make it work? Okay. Anyway, we have because the business is the way it is. We have sales at Neil Adams Studio on auctions and sale Tuesdays and Fridays. Okay, starting at what time? We start at 7. Okay, and so I get a lot of, not unlike this here, except these are fans and they're interested in buying artwork, whether it's sketches or pages or convention sketch, what you normally do at a convention. Okay, plus other things like we have cabinets full of advertising stuff. You would think that comic book fans will buy advertising stuff, but in fact they buy maybe twice as much advertising stuff as they buy comic book stuff, because there's things in there that they didn't think they'd see. Okay, so anyway, I was waxing poetic about Gene Colan's stuff and how I'd love to get some of it to ink, but of course I never got a shot at it. So that's not the kind of thing that would have happened, but I would love to have gotten it. Well, I have a guy, Rich, Cirillo, who comes to our auction, who comes to the auction, bids and gets stuff. He's a big toy guy, but he's also an art guy, and he draws pretty good. He brought his portfolio in because we invite him to the studio, because I have him at my table at conventions. Okay, so he's fairly close, So he opened his portfolio, and sure enough, there were 3 Gene Colan pages, pencil pages, never inked. Okay, 3 pencil pages, and it was like, oh, that would be so good to ink. Anyway, he let him about an hour go by. He said, would you like to ink blue lines? I said, blue lines? Oh, yeah, of course. Why? Yes, absolutely. So anyway, he gave them to me for the half hour it took, and we made blue lines. So I've inked, for the first time in my life, Gene Colan pencils on blue lines.
Wow.
I might like to see them.
Yeah.
Take a look.
Can you see that? Am I in camera?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Gorgeous.
Very cool.
Imagine that coming out.
How did you approach his side of the pencil sort of loose shading? Did you go for a cross hatching? What was the...
Because I've been thinking about it so long, I knew it. I knew exactly what to do. There's a way to approach your line, whether it's a dry edge or whatever it is, and you can have different solutions at different times to get the effect that he has. Sometimes, I'll show you one here.
Oh, it's another one. Wow.
Yeah, I got 3. Remember I said?
Oh, look at that.
Look at that up in the top. See that?
Yeah.
See that?
Yeah.
Lightning.
Doesn't that look like pencil shading? That's ink.
Yeah.
That's ink. That's a dry brush, but done feathery, okay? Because it will reproduce. Might not reproduce as great as you want it, but then you're going to mix it with color anyway.
Right.
So it looks like his pencil. I mean, that's the way I knew in my mind that this is how it should be done. Anyway, so this is one of the pages.
Beautiful.
And of course you saw, and then this. Look at that.
Ah, man, his compositions were so brilliant.
Right?
Look at that back.
Right.
Yeah.
You put it and you make it solid. All you do is take that extra step, and then it's there. You know, I've always, so if I could live another life, I'd be a Gene Colan anchor. So good. And you're right. I mean, it was all there. What he did was, since he drew fast, like you may not see it up in here. There's a blue line on top of his head, right? And he's supposed to be kind of looking in the mirror. So he drew the head fast, and then he drew the body because he just flowed,
Right.
So okay, if he had the time, he would have moved that head up. So I moved the head up. It looks exactly, it's the same head, only moved up.
That's so cool.
That's great. I would love to see your approach. Who else would you ink if you had the chance?
Well, I inked some Gil Kane stuff. One short story, but Gil Kane would be another guy that I would ink because it's stuff that needs finishing. You know what
Was
I mean?
that the Conan stuff, Neil?
No, I ink a fantasy type character, interdimensional, typical characters. You go through a hole in the ground or a gem in the ground, and you go into this other dimension. Like a 6 or 8 page. Maybe it was a Len Wein story or something like that. But it was any of his stuff lends itself for somebody to finish it because it's really kind of outlines. It's like even when he inks his own stuff, he's got this dead line and it's just the same thickness and it holds together. It's nice and solid, but it's really not inked. Doesn't have the pleasure of the melodic ink and the flow of the pen and all the rest of that stuff. So I would, I'd love to get a bunch of Gil Kane stuff and ink that. That would be good. But I would say I inked a John Buscema Conan for Power Records. And I inked some stuff for Marvel, but we did it as Crusty Bunkers. So you can kind of pick my stuff out. But the one for Power Records, I did the whole thing. And boy, was it a joy. It was like, it's like poetry. He would indicate something in pencil and somebody could look at it and say, well, that's like unfinished. And you go, no, that's not unfinished. Everything is there. Everything is there. You just have to put the line and it appears. But I like that because then you're giving the inker license to play. Like, okay, I did Batman Odyssey, 13 books. And what I was doing with each of the books is I would give maybe half a dozen pages to a different inker. Kevin Nolan did a bunch of pages. Other people did pages. And it was sort of a test in my head to see, I like this guy's work. I wonder what he would do on this if I gave him that. And not everybody came up to what I would prefer. But Bill Sienkiewicz started inking pages. And because of his history, Bill Sienkiewicz was inking the pages the way I would ink them. So I got him on the phone. He had half a dozen more pages. I called him on the phone and I said, Bill, you're inking them like me. He said, yeah, I thought that's what you'd like. I said, no, ink them like you. I want you to add whatever it is that thing is that you add that turns people on. Don't ink it like me. I could give it to anybody. Ink it like you. And he said, I can just ink it like me? I said, yeah, put all that stuff all over the faces and stuff. I love that stuff. And sure enough, he did it. And there's a bunch of Bill Sienkiewicz. You want somebody to add something. I mean, you don't not necessarily always, because maybe, it's a religion and the story has to have a certain continuity. You can't screw around with it. But if you can get the best out of an inker, very often it's some wonderful thing. It's like Kevin Nolan. You kind of go, well, I know what Kevin Nolan's going to do. He's going to erase the faces and he's going to do them over again. But then he will not do it. He will just sort of do it,
Right.
And then it becomes Kevin Nolan-ish. But then it gets clean everywhere. Everything is clean. And he adds that thing without destroying the underlying drawing and turning it into Kevin Nolan. Anyway. So I have a lot of fun with this stuff.
I got
It
a
seemed to me
question.
that.
Oh.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of original art, I'd like to hear the story about you spearheading the art returns.
Well, okay. So I was fighting with DC and Marvel for a return of original art, and they would always say things like, "Well, it belongs to us." It's like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't belong to you. And they'd say, "No, it does belong to us. We buy it." No, you don't buy it. No, you buy the right to reproduce it. And they would say, "Well, no, we buy it. We feel it. We feel we buy it." Well, oh, okay. And they have me talk to lawyers, and they would say, "We feel we own it." And I go, "Pardon me, but you're a lawyer, okay? You don't have feelings. You're a lawyer, okay? All you're going to do is repeat what you think your client wants you to say. You don't have a soul, so you have no idea what we're talking about here. So if we have to, we can talk about the law, but you can't talk about what you feel. You don't feel anything." Well, so I'd rather talk to the publisher. Anyway, this went on for, once I stopped the destruction of the art, which I did one day, which is another story. 7 years went by. 7 years went by. They didn't return the original art. And finally had a big meeting, lawyers, publisher, blah, 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 on all Levitz. I said, I'd rather not talk to the lawyers. I'd rather just talk about what we're doing here and what this is all about. And lawyers are saying, well, this is, this is how we feel about it. This is, we feel we own the artwork. We bought the artwork. We own the artwork. And I said, well, just to clarify, okay, I have a book here. It's called The Copyright Law. Okay, and I put it on the table and I said, you might be familiar with it, but I'm going to quote some passages from the copyright. You're buying, okay, the copyright. And you know what's so wonderful about the copyright law? The word copyright means you have the right to copy. Very simple. It's like 1 and 1 makes 2. You're buying the right to copy. It's the right. That's why it's called the copyright law, because you're buying the right to copy. You're not buying the right to own. Well, we don't feel. Look, don't tell me how you feel. Okay, it's the law. Okay. Now I'm going to show you another law. It's called the sales tax law. Here's the sales tax law. Sales tax law says if you purchase something in the state of New York, but in many states, because every state has a sales tax. If you buy a thing like a cup, okay, it's a solid thing, okay, so you have to pay sales tax. But if you buy a right, it's not a thing, so you don't have to pay sales tax. If you buy an apron, it's a thing, so you have to pay sales tax. A dress, a hat, a pair of shoes, anything that you buy that's solid, that's a thing, okay, then you have to pay sales tax. If you buy a right, as covered in the copyright law, you're buying a tangible intangible. Okay? It's not a thing, it's a right. So you don't pay sales tax. And so, well, we may differ on that. Well, I'm sorry, guys. I don't care if you differ. You can differ all you want. This is the law. This is the copyright law. This is the sales tax law. Now, have you paid any sales tax on these pages you purchased? What do you mean? I said, well, okay. Imagine this. Imagine an artist goes to Albany, New York, the state capital, and there's a building in Albany, and on the 4th, 5th, and 6th floor, and I think another floor, but I'm not sure because I haven't been there. There's a place called sales tax office. If you go in there and you find an agent, and that person, let's say that person goes up there, says there's a company in New York that thinks they own 50 years of original art, but they haven't paid 1 penny in sales tax. You might want to go see them. Then the lawyers became quiet. And they said, "You wouldn't do that." I said, "No, not me, because I love you guys." But somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to do it because you're not paying sales tax on these pages. You don't own them. You own the rights within the pages. Once you copy them, that's the end.
What year was that?
I don't know. It was right after the new copyright of 78. I think so.
Oh.
I don't know. Whenever things changed. Within a week, DC Comics decided to start handing back the original art. Marvel within a week of that.
I mean, I know, with comic book, pencil rates and inking rates and all that, selling the original art later is like a huge, part of a lot of comic book artists' income. So I can't even imagine being a comic book artist if I couldn't sell my work afterwards.
Well, I'll tell you something. When I first proposed at the Academy of Comic Book Arts, my fellow members of the Academy of Comic Book Arts said to me, "Are you crazy, Neil? This stuff isn't worth anything."
And how much did that Batman cover go for again?
$600K.
Yeah.
Frazetta was another one who.
So
who said,
anyway,
no, I own the artwork.
let me tell you the end of the story. The end of the story is a little bit different. So I would go to. By the way, if any of your people want to get commissions, you can go to nealadamsstore.com, and my son is there, and he can give you, sell you commission. Anyway, I realized that there was a problem, and the problem was certain people were stealing artwork out of the drawers, so a lot of it was missing. And there were these agents, these guys around, not agents, but guys who would deal in this stuff. So what I did was I called these guys because I knew who they were. And I want to say their names. And I said, "Look, guys, okay, so it's been illegal up to now. Okay, this is stolen artwork. If you want to make a kosher business out of this, okay, and you want to be straight up, you can return original art to me, whatever you happen to have. I will give it back to the artist. I will introduce the artist to you and tell them that you are an agent, and you will take 25% of anything you sell, and you will act as their agent. Rather than a whole big thing, we're going to try to get people arrested and all the rest of it. So if you want to do that, go ahead and do it." So 3 guys were dealing in this stuff. Said yes, they would do it. I introduced them to the artists. It was a very nice, peaceful situation. Okay, they met them. They became agents. They went from dealing with stealing goods, stolen goods, to becoming agents. You probably know some of them, at least one. There was an artist who I'm not going to name who was taking stuff out of the drawers at DC Comics.
I've heard the story.
Yeah.
I think we all know.
I think we all know who you're talking about.
You don't say any names. Then
No, I know.
You say the name, I can't tell the story.
Yeah.
Okay. So I called him up and I said, "Nah, I'm going to come to your house tomorrow morning. Okay. And if you haven't returned the original art that you have now, okay, before the night is out, I'm going to punch your lights out."
Awesome.
Okay. He said, I would never do that. And I said, "No, you don't understand. I'm not asking you. I want the pages returned. If I don't get them returned, I will be at your house and I will punch your lights out." Simple as that.
I like that. I like that approach.
He returned 1,010 pages.
Whoa, man.
Wow.
Good grief.
That's the power of a NEAL punch right there.
Yeah.
A non-punch. I would call it a non-punch. No punch.
Just the threat of a NEAL punch.
Yeah, it was the mere threat of it.
I get nothing on my fist, nothing like that. And it worked out fine.
Neil, did you get to meet Muhammad Ali when you did that comic book at all?
Just shortly. I mean, I have only one little story relative to Muhammad Ali, when he finally finished the book after a fucking year, he had won the championship back for the third time. So he was going to be at a news conference, and we were going to announce the coming out of the book, and talk about him winning the championship. Hardly anybody cared about the comic book. But anyway, he came into the news conference, and we shook hands, and then it was very crowded, so he had to pass by. So I put my hand on his back, and I cleared some people away, and I moved him through the crowd. I put my hand on his back, and it was like I had put my hand on a solid stone wall. That's how solid he was, like a rock. I couldn't believe it. It's just your hand stop. Your hand stops. There's no like place where an indent of your fingers. It just boom like that. Oh, Jesus. Obviously, tremendous. Anyway, I'll tell you a better story. Okay, this is a great story. You might cry.
I'll probably cry.
Dan cries at everything.
I'm at a comic book convention, right? And this just happened last year, and this guy comes up to me, and he looked very healthy. Okay, so he said he was a trainer, and he bought. We had a couple of copies of Superman versus Muhammad Ali, and he bought one of them. And we were talking about Ali, and he said, I was his trainer. I said, what do you mean? I mean, you look too young to begin with, right? And he said, well, at the end, getting near the end, he had two people at the house working for him. One of them cleaned the house and cooked the meals, and one of them did physical therapy with him in this room, special room that he had, where he got on the bicycle and stuff like that. And he said, I was that guy. I did his training. I said, wow, that's impressive. Now, all I wanted to know was in my head, did Ali read the book? Right? That's all I cared about. I know it was terrible, but I really wanted to know because I never asked. I said, if Ali has a copy of the book? He said, that's an interesting story. He said, that the reprint, and there's a hardcover reprint, and then there's one that's smaller, a big hardcover reprint. And he said, and I had one at the table. He said, you see that book there? He said, I bought that book. And I took it to Ali to have him sign it. He said his hand was a little shaky and stuff, but he signed it for me. I said, oh, okay. He said, well, he asked me if I could go and buy 10 more copies of this book. Now, it had just come out, right? The reprint. He said, sure. So he went out to a bunch of stores and he got 10 copies and he brought them to Ali. They spent the next day cutting the pages out of the book and gluing them and putting them up on the wall in front of him while he trained.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Isn't that
I love that.
unbelievable? That blew my mind. Whoa.
This is such an amazing cover with all the likenesses and.
Yeah, some of them are likenesses that are not actually labeled because the lawyers decided they would get permissions from people to have them on the cover. Mm-hmm. So I said, but they're public figures. You don't have to get their permission. And the lawyer said, well, we ought to get their permission. It would be cool. I said, no. There's nothing cool about that. It's not cool. What if they decide to say no? Yeah. I've already drawn them on the cover. I said, no, they're not going to do that, Neil. Sure. They'll love it. They'll love it. I said, no. Some of them will love it. Some of them won't love it. They'll get up on the wrong side of the bed or whatever the hell it is, and they'll say no, and then I have to change it, put patches in. Yeah. Said, Neil, don't worry about it. We'll write a nice letter. So they wrote letters, okay? Well, as it turns out, some people got up on the wrong side of the bed. John Wayne got up on the wrong side of the bed. He's like, whatever the hell it was. Took him 3 months to say no. Didn't want to be on the cover. He is on the cover, but he's got a mustache.
Yes, I love that. That's great.
Telly Savalas said no.
Oh, really?
What?
Telly, you go, Telly Savalas? No, he's going to say yes, right? I don't know. Maybe he didn't get laid or whatever the hell it was. He said no. Okay. Now, I had Telly Savalas, and at that time he had a TV show about a detective, and he would always carry around this little lollipop in his right hand.
Kojak. Yeah.
Kojak, right? Carry a lollipop. So I thought, oh, screw this. So there he was, right in the front of the comic book. I took the lollipop out of his hands, and I called him Luthor.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
You see him down there?
Oh, yeah.
That is Telly Savalas' head. That's not Luthor's head.
Oh, that's funny.
Think of it. That's Telly Savalas.
It's great. You got Jimmy Carter there.
The hand comes up, but there's no lollipop in it.
Now, what was Joe Kubert's involvement? Wasn't there in the original cover process?
Joe was going to do the book, okay, which I thought was a fantastic choice. And he did the cover, and he did, if any of you saw the Norman Rockwell painting of the two boxers right by and all the characters by the ringside gangsters and stuff. It's got a double page spread, beautiful painting. Sort of did the takeoff of that. He had gangsters and tough guys around the ring, and he did that, and it basically looked just like that cover compositionally. Okay, but when he handed it in, Ali's people thought it looked kind of. They didn't like the likeness. They thought it looked kind of ugly, kind of crude, and they felt it wasn't. Ali wasn't handsome, and blah blah blah. So
this is it right here.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what I did they said they didn't want to use it. So now the logical choice turned out to be the guy who would draw more realistically, more illustrative. Okay, so that was me. So I went to Joe and I said, Joe, is that okay? I'm doing this because if you want to do it. He said, no, fine, no, fine. I said, Joe, do you mind if I use your composition? Because I want you to have a credit on this. So I would just like to trace your composition and just do my own drawing over it. I said, sure, no, go right ahead. So he gave me permission to use his composition. So if you look at what Joe did and you look at what I did, it's exactly the same composition, only with the new drawings.
Yeah.
Okay. And Joe had it up in his office in New Jersey for the longest time. Huh? In Dover, yeah. But his was the great cover, and so I basically traced the layout and just instead of going with gangsters, I went with famous people, but same general.
Yeah, that's amazing, iconic cover.
And I don't know if it's somewhere in the book where he gets a credit, but we always make sure that we credit Joe for the composition of the cover.
And not Joe Quesada in this case. Thank goodness.
No. I mean,
no, I'll tell you my Joe Quesada story.
This is
wait.
Excellent.
Wait a minute. I don't know this story.
Wait, does it involve hookers?
So we're in San Diego, and there were some very famous parties in San Diego put on by what's his name? Guy from Graffiti. Bob Chapman. Okay, there was these Bob Chapman parties. Probably still does it. Of course, it's no conventions, but he puts on probably every year puts on a party. So we're kind of walking there, and I'm walking with Joe Quesada, and he's telling me about how they're interested in him kind of stepping into an executive position or more than just art director or artist or whatever. And I said, look, I don't want to be begging. I said something like this. I don't want to be begging, but we need an artist there. And I think it's a great opportunity. And I think you should do it. And I'm not saying that he listened to me or in any way valued what I said, but I said, what we need artists doing this, like Dick Giordano ended up at DC Comics. that somebody who knows something about comic books, somebody who deserves it, somebody who's intelligent, somebody who knows how to read and write would be good. I think the best thing in the business would be, you're going to have to give up a lot of drawing, but I think it would be just great if you would do that. I think it would help Marvel incredibly. They had no idea what they're asking here. And as I heard later, yeah, not because I said anything, but he did indeed switch over and made quite a sacrifice. But I think it helped Marvel immensely. And that's my Quesada story.
Thanks, Neil. I mean, I actually you sent me a letter when I became editor. Do you remember this? You sent me a letter when I became editor in chief with some advice, from someone who's worn the business hat and the artistic hat, and that letter is framed right at the entrance of my home as you come in.
Well, good. That's great.
Along with some other dignitaries I got in there, but yeah. So.
And a napkin with lipstick on it.
Well, no, I got that from Vinnie Coletta. Hey Neil, I'm trying to get a question in here, but nobody lets it. Two things I wanted to ask you. One, when you were a kid, growing up, and you decided that art is what was art always what you wanted to do? Was there a decision point?
Art and science. Okay,
and who was the artist that you looked at and you go, that's who I want to be. That's who I want to model my career after. That's who I idolize.
I think you could break that into moments.
Right.
Some people could break it into years. I can almost break it into moments, but not really. I love art. I love all kinds of art. I love artists expressing themselves. I love the work that they do, and I want to be all of them. And I want to know everything that they know. And I started with Al Fago. Al Fago is an artist none of you guys know who did Atomic Mouse, and he had a very lyrical kind of cartoon style. And I really liked that, so I copied it. So when I was 10 years old, I started to do a Atomic Mouse comic book. I would draw Atomic Mouse all over everything. Now, because I wasn't good enough to draw it more realistically, then something hit me that maybe I could apply the same things in cartoony quality or Bigfoot quality. We call it Bigfoot. I don't know if you guys know the difference between Bigfoot and Littlefoot. Bigfoot is an artist that draws cartoons with big feet, and a Littlefoot artist is a guys that draw big human guys with muscles and little tiny feet. That's a Littlefoot artist. You're a Littlefoot artist.
Yeah.
So I realized that maybe I could graduate. So what do I graduate? What comic books were out there that were any good in those days? There weren't many. I mean, Ross Andrew was not doing comic books like that much. It were just people at DC. There were some guys at Dell and was another company. I forget the name. Anyway,
was it Charlton?
No, not Charlton. Charlton they did nothing. But Dell and it'll jump into my mind. Anyway, they were like Dell. Okay, and you never knew where the hell they were. Did they exist in New York, in California? Where the hell were they? And if you look for work, there's no way to find them. Anyway, at DC Comics, however it happened, and remember that Gil Kane was evolving at DC Comics. So in those days, when I was a teenager, it wasn't that good. He got better later. He's a learning artist. He would learn all through his career. But there was Joe Kubert, there was Russ Heath, and then a little bit later there was Mort Drucker. Mort Drucker was doing war stories. Actually, Mort Drucker's story is that he began in the bullpen, and they treated him like shit, and they didn't realize how talented he was. And then they gave him some gag cartoons to do, and then they gave him the Bob Hope comic book to do. And he did a great job on that. And then for whatever reason, like they treated him like shit, he got an opportunity to work for Mad Magazine, and then the rest is history. But while he was at DC Comics, he was doing war stories. Now you had Joe Kubert doing Joe Kubert war stories, which meant that if you had a tiger tank, it sort of looked like a tiger tank, you would quite look like a tiger. And then you had Rusty doing the tiger tank, and it would look exactly like a tiger tank, including the rolled up tarps and everything else. But then Mort Rucker came along, and he had grit. He would draw with grit, shit flying around, and people being kicked back into the air by explosions that are nearby. And then you realize, oh, there's another type of art. Well, I studied all three at the same time because that's all there was. That's all there was. There was the comic strip guys. So you had Stan Drake, and you had Dan Barry, who was not good for Flash Gordon at all, but a good artist. The other strip guys. Then you had Hal Foster, who was Prince Valiant, which bored the shit out of me when I was a kid. Now it's like this, it's manna from heaven. But when I was a kid, I hated it. It was boring. Because kids want to see punching and shit. Right? So then you had, so you got Kubert and Russ Heath and Mort Trucker, hardly superhero comic book stuff. Then you had Carmine Infantino, whose stuff was stiff and elongated, and there was a certain architectural quality to it, but it wasn't much of anything. Then suddenly, the first issue of Flash came out, and it was inked. It was drawn by Carmine Infantino, and it was inked by Joe Kubert. And it was like heaven. And then Jack Kirby showed up doing Challenges of the Unknown. They weren't good until Wally Wood. Oh, I remember Wally Wood from EC Comics. Yes. Inking Jack Kirby. And then it was like heaven had come to earth. What the hell is this? Superhero comic books can have good quality? It's like, I was stuck in this comic strip. And you had two levels. You had good strips and you had, crappy comic books, except for Joe Kubert and Mort Rucker and Rusty. And then suddenly Jack Kirby with Wally Wood. Then suddenly Jack Kirby and Wally Wood got a strip called Skymaster. So I'm in high school and I did a Skymaster Sunday page because the sun had risen on a new way to do things. Anything that would come along that would inspire me by anybody who was there, who was left over from the great days, I would copy them and I would trace them and I would emulate them. And in the end, okay, I never got to do comic books. I never got to do it. I never got through the door. I would show my stuff was professional, and they wouldn't even let me through the door. They had this old guy come out and look at my stuff and say, "Kid, you're wasting your time. You don't want to do it." So I said, "Well, can I show this stuff to your editors?" "No, kid, I can't even bring it in." Can I just show it? "No, I can't bring it in. I'm sorry. Do something else." And so I did. I went out in the world and I didn't do comic books. I did advertising comic books, and I did backgrounds on comic strips, and I did anything but that. And at the same time, I made 4 or 5 times as much money as doing comic books because they were paying $45 a page. Imagine surviving on $45 a page, guys. You certainly wouldn't put as much work into it as you do now. Couldn't.
Sure. Yeah, totally.
Couldn't survive.
Jeff.
Time. Remember I told you I did Chip Martin, College Reporter, $300 a page. Not that I did a lot of them, but I did Savage Rifles and I did all kinds of other stuff. And I got paid well. And then when the shit hit the fan for me at a particular time, I thought I could just fall back into these comic books a little bit for a little period of time. And I took everything that I knew from everything else. And I did stories for Jim Warren, Creepy, Eerie, and Vampirella. And then I took my work over to because I put so much work into those stories. I wasn't making any money. It was bad. Then I went to DC Comics, and guess who I went to? I went to Bob Kanigher, who did the war stories, because Hubert and Russ Heath and Mort Drucker. I went to him. The reason I went to him was because I had gotten through my higher level comic strip mojo, I had gotten the right to recommend somebody to do the Green Beret comic strip, and so I recommended Joe Kubert, and he was so happy. And so Bob Kanigher had lost Joe Kubert. So all I had to do after Warren is to go over to DC Comics, go to Bob Kanigher and show him samples that looked sort of like Joe Kubert. And he immediately said, gave me work. And so I asked backwards into comic book.
Wow.
So everybody that I could love outside of comic books, whether it was advertising comic books or Norman Rockwell or Bob Peake or Austin Briggs or Bernie Fuchs or Al Parker. I studied everybody because I didn't even know that I would survive in this world of insanity where people didn't really have that much work to do. And comic books were going to be out of business next year. But I did anything to survive until I hit comic books. And I thought, I'm only going to be here for a year and then I'm going to leave. And I never left.
Yeah.
Fell in love with comic books.
Neil, do you have time for some? I know Jeff has one question, and we were going to take some questions from some of the people watching. But
no, don't worry about my question. Let guests ask question.
Whatever you like, guys.
Yeah.
Ask a question.
Well, Jeff, you had a question about the character you're drawing, actually.
Well, I just was. I know that you created John Stewart. I just wanted to hear, if you had time, a little bit about how you created him and what your thought was when you were making him, and what that process was like.
Well, okay, John Stewart was a result of the fact that I kind of knew that this run that we had on Green Lantern, Green Arrow was going to end because we were, even though it seemed like we had endless stories to do or endless subjects to tackle, when you handle enough of them, you start to discover that, maybe there aren't an endless supply of things to do, of stories to tackle. And Denny had written a story on overpopulation. And I thought, well, first of all, there were too many people in the damn story. I was getting pages. Overpopulation, I'm sorry, this is a lot of people. So that was a pain in the ass. But beyond that, I knew a little too much. I mean, people were getting vasectomies and stuff so they wouldn't have any children because everybody thought that they were going to overpopulate the planet and mess everything up. And it was ridiculous because you could fit the population of the world into the state of Texas. So it was ridiculous. Nonsense. What is it now?
Chris just asked if anything happened.
I don't know. Did you not hearing me?
I can hear you.
I have no idea. Anyway, so I thought we were running out of stuff. But there were two subjects we hadn't covered. One of them was problems that I had run into relative to integration in my career in different areas. Too long to describe. And also drug addiction. So I went into Julie Schwartz and I said, Julie, if something happens to Hal Jordan, you need a second Green Lantern. We ought to have a second Green Lantern take his place. He said, well, we already have that. We have Guy Gardner. And he pulled out a book, and it was Guy Gardner. And he was this blonde, white, Anglo-Saxon Protestant gym teacher in the Midwest. And I looked at it, and I said, okay, this is my suggestion, Julie. We have him hit by a bus. And Julie said, why do you want to hit him with a bus? I said, well, you hit him with a bus, it's not like breaking his arm. He can come back in a month and a half and break his arm. But if you hit him with a bus, he's going to have internal injuries and all kinds of stuff. Could be away for a year, 2 years. So you need somebody to replace him. You want to hit this guy with a bus so you can replace him? Yeah, I think we ought to do that. well, what do you have in mind? I said, well, I don't know. Julie, you ever watch the Olympics? I watch the Olympics. Julie is a New York Jew. And New York Jews have to be the most liberal people in the world because that is the standard for a New York Jew. Okay? You got to be the most liberal. Ask anybody. Okay. And so he didn't want to be caught with his pants down here. Yes, I watched the Olympics. I said, well, did you ever notice that you never saw like 3 white guys? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, I see Asian guys and I see black guys and I see white guys, but I rarely ever see 3 white guys. He said, you want a black Green Lantern, don't you? Why, that's shallow, really, Julie. You can see through me so easily like a puddle. I said, yes, you are. So what if we give you an Asian Green Lantern? I said, well, you don't have a great reputation with Asians, really. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, you have this guy that's been in Hal Jordan's best buddy for 10 years, and you call him Pie Face. What's wrong with that? Julie, Pie Face. You saying that's not an insulting name? I could bring 100 Asians in here and they would all say Pie Face. Terrible. What's wrong with you? He said, well, we didn't mean it that way. Well, yeah, but you know, Julie, it's insulting. You can't do that. He said, oh, well, okay. You know, we can do a black Green Lantern. I said, no, we can't do a black Green Lantern. He said, what do you mean? I said, we can do a black Green Lantern if he's got a college education and he's a professional man, and not a gangbanger who suddenly gets struck by lightning and he's a hero. He said, okay. He said, but you have to draw it. Because I was, you know, they were going to give Green Lantern to other people. He said, you have to draw that. I said, not only do I have to draw it, Julie, as far as I know, I'm the only guy in comic books that knows how to draw black people. Even black artists that are coming in are taught to draw black people like white people. I said, well, fine. I'll get Denny to do the story. I said, that's fine. So Denny does a story, does a good job, because guess what? Denny knows what's going on. He gets it. Okay. Did a good story. I get the script. I read the first page. Good. Guy's taking on the cops. Cops are a pain in the ass. Okay. And his name is Lincoln Washington.
What?
I said, I went there, found Denny. I said, Denny, Lincoln Washington. Denny goes, not my name, but Julie. Julie said, wanted to call him Lincoln Washington. So I go to Julie's room, and I close the door and I lock it because there's going to be some yelling, right? I said, Julie, Lincoln Washington. He says, what? I know lots of guys with that name. I said, Lincoln Washington is a slave name. What are you talking about? There's people by the thousands now changing their names so they're not called Lincoln Washington. You're going to put it on a comic book. It's going to be, you're going to have people marching up and down in front of the building. Are you out of your mind? He says, well, you pick a name. I said, a name, just a name. Put some names in a bowl and pick one out. Just a name. He said, you pick it. Fine, Jon Stewart. How would I know he'd become a late night comedian?
Yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah. That's your genius.
And Jon Stewart's not his real name.
No.
So anyway, that's right. He's not black. So anyway, so they made a movie. Okay, and they were talking about having Jon Stewart in the movie, and they decided not to. And Warner's lost $150 million on that movie. $150 million. When they announced the movie, they said, okay, we're going to have Hal Jordan, Green Lantern. And all the kids in America said, who the hell is Hal Jordan? Who the hell is Hal Jordan? Green Lantern is Jon Stewart. Because the kids were watching the television show. So the companies, I don't know how, the DC Comics and Warner's somehow equated a sales of 50,000 copies of a comic book to a couple of million kids watching a TV show. Somehow they were the same. Nonsense. I bet there's going to be another Green Lantern movie, and there is. It's going to be Jon Stewart in there. Bet your ass it is.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. Hopefully that happens.
Excellent. Thanks, Neil. That's fantastic.
Yeah, Jeff was talking about that all day. So
that's true. It's true and funny. It's true and funny at the same time.
Yeah, I'm still partial to Kyle, but I like John second.
Yeah, well, you might like him now, but he was a bad asshole in the beginning. You can read the old comic books and he's kind of a jackass. But it's it's the way you write it. You can always write somebody sympathetic. I think Hal Jordan is not. It's very hard to write Hal Jordan sympathetic after he kills a city.
True.
You ought to pull it out of the shitter. I understand with them why they can't figure out a way to save that. Because I think it would make a great series of movies if they did that. Like Joe, you saved Spider-Man by making him young again, going through that crap. I mean, you was taking a lot of shit for that.
Oh yeah, still do. But I mean, you know this, Neil, because you were around, the trenches even before I got there. But ever since they married him off, every editor in chief, ever since realized, oh my God, how do we put the baby back in the the baby back in the bath or whatever.
No, that was good. Did a great thing.
Yeah, it was something that had to be done because in every incarnation of Spider-Man, every incarnation where kids get introduced to that character, he is a young man.
That is the thing, is that you call him one calls him Spider-Man, but they call him Spider-Man knowing he's not a man. Yeah. It's part of the whole thing. That's really that's what he's about. He's not a man. He's a teenager. He's really a teenager. And that's what makes him a great character. And what you did, I just thought you took the bull by the horns there. It was great. I really love that.
Thank you,
if nobody else tells you, you're hearing it from me. You did a great job there.
What's really funny about that is that the sort of the mob mentality of the internet, right? I get blasted and jumped on. It's fine. It's part of the job. But when I'm in conventions, people come up to me. I mean, I can't tell you how many people come up to me and whispered saying, by the way, I liked One More Day despite what people say. And but they say it because they don't want to get like outed or something. It's really weird. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's something that had to happen, and it was part of the job.
And the result of it is in the result of the pudding is in the eating. I mean, obviously the character's a great character again now. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it freed up writers to tell better Spider-Man stories. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. So that's a whole other conversation.
Well, Neil, it was a pleasure having you on here, and also getting to see your artwork. And
I thought we just got started.
Well, we should do a part 2 then.
Yeah, it'd be great to have you back on.
You know what? There's a button in the back of my head. Like I said, you just have to press that button, and I get going. You guys missed a half a dozen things. You missed. I'm doing a 2-hour Sasquatch movie to go on the internet.
Oh, cool.
I am doing a sound version of Nosferatu.
Wow.
I don't know exactly what we're going to do with it. I study science. I have a whole project on the growing Earth. I've got so many areas that I'm involved in. Well,
if you want to do another episode, we'd be honored to have you, Neil.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
Let a few beats go by, and sure, I'd be glad to.
Yeah, and everybody, definitely, if you live in LA or you're visiting LA, you're going to want to check out the comic book store.
And on Tuesdays and Fridays, come to our sale and our auction. You can get original art. We have some original art there. We do commissions. You can go to nealadams.com. In this time of COVID-19, remember we don't go to conventions, and we don't go to conventions because we don't want to die. So anybody out there that's interested in getting commissions from your favorite artists, maybe they don't do commissions, but they'd be crazy not to. Go and get your commissions. This is the time to support your artists. This is the time to support your comic book stores. There's a lot of pressure on a lot of people in our industry. It doesn't have to be there because we actually are doing fine. We just hit it really, really hard, but we can come out of it. But when we end this whole thing, you want a comic book store in your neighborhood, and you want to be reading Marvel and DC Comics, and you want to be able to, and you want all those movies to be made. And there's a lot of crap going on, flying through the air left and right. And there's no reason for you to be involved in it except be involved in supporting the comic book stores and the comic book artists and writers, and we'd appreciate it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well,
The
thanks.
man himself. You've heard it here.
Thanks, Neil. Ben, do you want to sound us off?
Ben even
Ben.
He's all choked up with emotion. Why is it Neil always knows the right thing to say?
Practice.
I don't
Let's see
practice.
if we can get him in there.
There we go. You wouldn't let me
Jeff?
in with
Oh,
6 tiles, so we max out. So I had to pull Neil's art out. So yeah,
Okay.
it was fun sitting there backstage listening to you guys. It was a lot of good information.
Yeah, great show. Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Forget that
So-
nice at the beginning of the show.
Thank you, everyone, for joining this evening. Have fun out there. Stay safe. Wash those hands. Support your artists, and do all sorts of good things for other people.
Distancing gloves and yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
6 foot away.
That's
Take it
Be
easy.
nice to dogs.
Bye bye now.
It's very important too. Take care.
Hi, everybody.
yes.
Bye.